News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
And I'm John Tucker.
Well, John, the rise in oil comes as Iran steps up attacks on energy infrastructure across the Middle East. Operations were suspended at the Shah natural gas field in the United Arab Emirates after a drone strike, while an Iraqi oil field and key Emirati port were also targeted by Iranian drones and missiles. Begin more with Bloomberg Middle East managing editor Oner Ant.
The single most important thing about this attack is that it was the first time Iran successfully attacked an upstream asset in the UAE. An upstream asset is an energy facility that produces oil or gas. That's why yesterday's or this morning's attack on the Shah gas field near Abu Dhabi's border with Saudi Arabia was especially important. And it is the second significant attack targeting a gas facility in the Middle East.
And Bloomberg's Oner Ant says the strikes further hamper the outlook for global energy supplies as the war enters its third week.
And Karen, oil has risen more than 40% since the war began. There has been a near complete halt of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. As heard right here on Bloomberg Radio, President Trump reiterated his appeals for help from other nations to secure the strait.
We strongly encourage other nations whose economies depend on the strait far more than ours. You know, we get less than 1% of our oil from the strait, and some countries get much more. Japan gets 95%, China gets 90%. Many of the Europeans get quite a bit. South Korea gets 35%. So we want them to come and help us with the strait.
And during that same news conference, President Trump said in a private conversation a former president expressed regret about not attacking Iran.
47 years, no president was willing to do what I'm doing, and they should have done it a long time ago. It would have been a lot easier. There's no president that wanted to do it, and yet every president knew. I've spoken to a certain president, who I like, actually, a past president, former president. He said, I wish I did it. I wish I did, but they didn't do it. I'm doing it.
President Trump declined to name the president. The Associated Press is reporting representatives for the four living former presidents, 3 Democrats and 1 Republican, said none have been in touch with President Trump recently.
President Trump is delaying his summit with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. He was scheduled for it later this month. Heather Conley is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs in the George Bush administration.
This is a big decision. Certainly the president has been looking forward to this visit to Beijing, the policy preparation that's gone into place. But I think the White House completely understood that the optics would be terrible as a war is raging. American servicemen and women are in harm's way while he is being feted in Beijing. So I think this is a really big deal that it's been postponed. But again, I think it's correct. The president needs to stay laser focused on a conflict that's spreading by the day.
Heather Conley, a non-resident senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, speaking with Bloomberg Balance of Power. President Trump's visit to China will be the first by a U.S. leader in nearly a decade.
Well, John, President Trump says he wants to finish the war in Iran before turning his attention to Cuba. The New York Times reports the U.S. has told Cuba that for meaningful progress to be made in negotiations, the country's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, must step down. President Trump told reporters yesterday that America will take control of the country in some form soon.
Taking Cuba, that'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth? They're a very weakened nation right now. They were for a long time.
And the president spoke as Cuban officials said they would begin allowing more investment from Cubans living abroad as part of a broader effort to bolster the state-dominated economy.
And on the backdrop of the war in the Middle East, Federal Reserve officials, they start their 2-day policy meeting today. Let's get a preview from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
The meeting comes amid rising oil prices and how that will affect the Fed's inflation outlook. Eric Rosengren is the former president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston.
I would highlight that even before the war, the committee was quite divided. So there was a significant subset of individuals that were very concerned about inflation and a somewhat smaller subset that were worried about the fragility of the labor market.
Federal Reserve policymakers are widely expected to hold interest rates steady while also putting out new forecasts for their outlook for inflation and growth. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg.